Perfect. Hello, welcome everyone to this week's presentation on how to make your small business more accessible to folks online. I'm David Lee. I'm going to be your presenter today for Grow with Google, the webinar series with US PAC. Just a little bit about myself. I'm a digital marketer for the last 11 plus years, working with small businesses as well as other agencies to provide marketing services like website design, social media, and also creative and also paid media services. So today, hopefully I can share with you something that you didn't know about website accessibility with people who have visible and also invisible disabilities. So prior to us diving right into this presentation, just wanted to show you a quick video, which will actually give you a more visual representation of what we mean by accessible websites and technology that will help other people get familiar with your content or your business online. So here is the video.
I'm what's called a coda. My parents were both born deaf. I was not. When people in the hearing world learn that about me, they always want to know more.
You start out your forehead and then go out with your hand.
I've always had one foot in the deaf world and one in the hearing world. I translated a lot from my parents. It made us closer. Now that it's been over a year since we've seen each other in person, communication is more important than ever. Especially with this guy.
Who is that, Owen? Who is that? That's you!
It's their first time being grandparents, so they don't want to miss a single moment. And I don't either. We can't wait for you to meet him.
Amazing, right? So that really sets the tone for this presentation. Today's agenda really just wanted to walk through what is accessibility. So you got a little bit of a preview of that. That's just one story from one family using the great technology that Google has embedded into some of its services. And one of the things that we're going to talk about is the best design practices for your small business, whether it's a app maybe that you have or a website. How do we engage with those to better access your content? Then we'll review some email accessibility as well as the physical accessibility of your content. And then all this really ties into is being more inclusive of your viewers and your audience around the world. So we're going to walk right into defining what accessibility is, right? I, for one, sometimes when you say accessibility, just meaning access to the website, but it's not really just folks that are already able to, have a browser open or internet connection. It's more about how it's perceived and understood and how to interact and navigate your website. So everyone can be able to see your products, your services, or utilize your tools. And then by doing that, we need assistive technologies. Right now, if you're viewing this presentation, you can see on the top bar, I do have closed captioning enabled. And you can actually do this right through Google Slides, which is a free service with your Gmail account. So this is for those who might have trouble with audio disabilities or visual disabilities of seeing the content on the slide, but need the closed captioning. So why is accessibility important for us? The World Health Organization estimates over 1 billion people worldwide live with some form of disability. That's roughly about 15% of the world population, 26% of 1 in 4 adults in the U.S. And, one of the things that, is kind of pushing for a lot of this accessibility and assistive technology is the spending power of this group, exceeding $6 trillion. So with how technology is today, as well as how many people are online, this is why we have to create sites as well as applications that are accessible to everyone. So when you're creating digital content that's being accessible to everyone, it's actually called universal design. This takes into consideration as well as tactics to improve the overall experience for all users. So these are 4 of the key points. It allows people to engage without any obstacles or challenges, right? And then you're able to expand on your market because this is, kind of an overlap, right? People with disabilities as well as able-bodied folks are able to access your content easily. Obviously, with that access, they're able to improve their experience. And then one critical thing, which most people overlook sometimes, would be the company's legal risks. So in certain industries, it's paramount to have these accessibility applications or a process in place in order to have your site or your content accessible to people with disabilities. So you might have heard ADA compliance or HIPAA compliance. If you're in the medical, legal, and real estate type of industries, your sites need to have these kind of guidelines prepared for everyone to be able to view your content on your website. So let's dive in a little bit about universal design. So it doesn't matter if you have a disability or not. These are all elements for creating digital content. And these are 7 techniques to clearly communicate items on your website, right? So image description, alt text and descriptions, color contrast, design techniques, text formatting and headers, text links, and then video captions and transcripts. As you can imagine, all these have different components to them and help people with disabilities to better engage with your content. So we're going to do a really quick exercise here. How would you describe this image that we have on the screen right now? I'll give you a second to think about it. Utilizing what we just mentioned about the 7 techniques. With every website, when you put on visual items on the site, you will also be able to modify the alt text, right? The alt text sometimes isn't for face value available right onto the website itself. It's usually, revealed through the accessibility application, or if you were able to right click on it and download it, you would see alt text, or you will see what the site would be able to read out. So right now it's a cup of coffee, right? You could even go further and say it's a cup of coffee on a blue background with a spoon on a serving plate or something like that, right? So these things help describe to readers who have a screen reader. And sometimes I know that the websites that I come across have not so great alt text. So if someone's using a screen reader, who might be visually impaired, wouldn't be able to capture that, visual, right? The screen reader would maybe say, a lot of times it's just people don't label, right? So image source, they wouldn't even put cup. They would just say whatever the syntax that they have. And then the alt text wouldn't even be a cup of coffee. It would be maybe something else, right? So, it makes it harder for that person to actually engage with your website or even experience what you're trying to convey without these things in place. Another benefit of having these things on your website is for the SEO purposes, right? So search engine optimization makes your site, one, more accessible. Two, just having Google seeing those things would help you rank higher. So, for example, if this is a diner or a coffee brand, this would definitely help them with the SEO efforts. And so that's one way of how to use alt text and descriptions for a lot of the images on your website. So pay close attention. You can also review a lot of your business website now by right-clicking on your site on whatever web page that you're on, and then view source, right? And then if you have a lot of images, see if those images have alt text. If they don't, you know that you need to make changes there so that people who have screen readers can actually experience your content. So here's another great example, right? Using long descriptions, captioning what is being displayed on your site. So captions are just longer descriptions of the key info that you have. And sometimes you can break down complex information that way. And this is just great for people to understand the content that's on your website. And then this is something that a lot of people also overlook, because sometimes with their brand colors or how they want to design their site, there's just a fine line of like adjustment here where someone can visually see something or help them see it better. As you can see here, the difference between low contrast and high contrast. This is, would be something that is beneficial for somebody maybe potentially, colorblind or just hard of reading text unless they have high contrast. So this is going to definitely help out those types of users. And then these are other design techniques that would go beyond color. As you see here, the bullet list, utilizing high contrast, hue, saturation, and brightness, using thick lines, various patterns of dash lines. And then don't assume that color conveys a specific meaning. And then also explore with textures. A lot of times websites seem to be using only a few colors or just a few design techniques, whereas you could really broaden up your creativity by using different types of textures, adding patterns or labels for contrast in charts, and then label elements like title, legends, and axes. These are all things you need to consider if you're displaying graphs or charts on your website, just so that people can view them a little bit better, to have the understanding as well as visually see the charts in a clear manner. So this is a great example, right? So I think they're taking the charts potentially from Google Analytics. As you notice, if you ever run reports, these are the type of high contrast colors that are being used for these exports. As you can see on the right-hand side here, the charts are really clear, displayed, everything's laid out properly. There's high contrast colors, so you can tell the difference between what you're presenting. And then, if you are using Google products, I would definitely, recommend using the Google Analytics here with their reporting modules, and then see the difference, right? So this is a great example of utilizing accessibility design tactics. And then, of course, you should use varying text for your website. So don't use just all one font, one color, one size for every web page. You do have a lot of options. And again, this is another helpful tip for your Google rankings and SEO efforts. When you hear H1, H2, H3 headers for the text, this will definitely help out, with not only for the website design portion, but then on the advantage for the folks that have maybe visual disability. There is a assistive technology that uses the ways to interpret the content, right? Letting you know what each of the page are trying to convey when you have these different headers for the text. So this is a great example and something that's overlooked. A lot of times people say, oh, visit this link, right? As you see the example here, that's something that will be poorly written or just very vague. It's better to give a little bit more detail. So visit the Grow with Google homepage. That's a little bit more clear. It gives it a sense of direction and you know what you're clicking into. There's no ambiguity there. So always put more detail if you can in situations like this. And then next up, we have video captions and transcripts. You're viewing this live stream right now with the caption on the top. And then for those folks who might be wondering how you do this with Google Slides, this is something that I can actually show you right now. So if you go into your Google slide right on the corner here, we're on slide 18, and you see on the lower left-hand corner, you can opt to expand this gear icon, and then you can actually toggle the captioning, right? And you can also potentially use different languages, and then set it on the top or bottom, and then also create the text size. So this is a great assistive technology that Google has embedded into Google Slide, as well as other Google services to help people read better or be able to understand me who have maybe audible disability. So going back to our presentation really quick, I just want to do a side note there for the folks that might be wondering how to get the closed captioning for their presentation. So yeah, talking about video captions and transcripts using automatic captioning. You might have noticed this on a lot of social media apps and also on YouTube. When you're watching the video, sometimes the automatic captioning is there when you enable it. And then a lot of times when I'm editing videos for clients, this is something that we always try to have the correct spelling, correct grammar, correct wording in the captioning. Because again, this technology is great, but it's not 100% perfect. You still need a little bit of a human touch to make sure all the words that you're mentioning are correct and that the meaning is there, so that when people are reading the captions, it has the proper message and also the spelling of the certain words. So this is just one quick screenshot view, how you can enable that captioning. It's really easy to find. It's on the lower right-hand corner of the video that you're watching. And a lot of times, even with Google, if you're watching a piece of content that is out of your country or not the same language, you can certainly auto-translate that. And it's right next to the closed captioning button. So here you go. This is an example with Vimeo. You have options to do auto captioning for multiple languages. And again, this is about accessibility, right? So I know a lot of times we tend to put English as the main language, which would cover majority of our viewers and audience groups. But however, once you're online, it is a global content, right? So if you want things, I would say, easily understood by folks that don't speak English, this is another way to do it. And then also, here's an example with TEDx. Some of you might have seen a lot of their content, and a lot of times they have subtitles on the bottom of their videos. TikTok also does a great job. So I know that I used to commute to New York City for work, and a lot of times I would see people with headphones on. They could be, listening to music, or they could be just trying to block out the noise of the bus or the commotion that's happening on the streets. But a lot of times I see them without playing the volume, and they're actually reading the videos that they're watching on these social media apps. So, TikTok has done a great job of, automatically generating the captions in live feeds, as well as people creating these snippets. And of course, you can do this with YouTube. If you're a YouTube creator, you're probably familiar with this. If not, I highly recommend doing your own transcripts. Now, if you use Premiere Pro, there is a function in there that I just recently discovered that you can actually create your closed captioning there and then re-upload it onto YouTube. And it's pretty spot on. I would say it's 99.9% accurate with pronunciations, spelling, and less typos, right? If you have done the closed captioning subtitles within the YouTube platform, sometimes it's a hit or miss and it doesn't line up with the timing. So definitely check that out if you are a YouTube content creator, as well as a video editor using Premiere Pro. Okay, let's move right on to creating and sharing PDFs. So PDF documents require effort to make them accessible, right? So PDFs, sometimes they have diagrams, the images, even text-only PDFs can be difficult to interpret. And then we typically try to avoid PDFs, right? So when you have a PDF, sometimes, it's harder to have a screen reader pull the text because they're viewing that as a PDF. And the screen reader only pulls up really the alt text and any form of text that's on the website. So with a PDF, a lot of times I do see some websites where it's just PDF after PDF on this web page. So essentially the screen reader really can't pick that up. And then on the side note of that, the PDF usually gets compressed or scaled down to fit on the web page. So visually, you can't read anything on it. You will have to download it and then open it up and view it. And then even at that, it's also sometimes hard to get the text or even the visual aspects of it across, because some of these assistive technologies just doesn't pick up PDF documents. All right, so we talked about PDFs, and we talked about websites, we talked about accessibility. Now let's move on to email, right? So obviously, sometimes people sign up for your newsletters or you're actually sending out emails. These are just some of the best practices to keep in mind. So be mindful of logical reading order, use one column layout, make the purpose of hyperlinked text clear. We saw that in an example before. Don't say click here. Make sure it says, oh, whatever the hyperlink text should be, should describe where you're directing them to go, right? So if I'm writing you an email and you're going to this Grow with Google webinar, it should say Grow with Google webinar hyperlinked, right? Not just click this link. Avoid emojis in the email subject line or to convey critical information. So you might have seen this with some of the retailers with promotional emails. You don't want to put emojis because a lot of times, not everyone understands certain emoji messaging or the culture around using emojis. So you definitely want to make sure that you're conveying your message in a more universal design. So stuff that's easily conveyed, easy to understand, because sometimes you use an emoji and then people might construe that as something else and different from what you want it to mean. So I would leave that out unless if you and the recipient have already agreed that the meaning of this emoji is meaning this. Then of course for those select few emails or communication items, then of course you can do that. But for the most part, we're talking about if you're sending this to a new recipient or you're sending it out as a newsletter, you definitely want to be a little bit mindful of using those emojis. Here's a couple more best practices for email accessibility. So maintain a 60-40 text to image ratio, right? You don't want to have too many images, right? Because again, what's the old saying? A photo is worth 1,000 words. So you don't want to misconstrue anything with the messaging. You want text there so that if they have a screen reader, they can really describe everything that's happening. But also, you don't want them to just be looking at photos in your email. The other item is avoid overusing links. I don't know if you have, but for me, I have received emails where there are over 20, 30 links in there. Granted, they are all items that led to somewhere like a blog article or a resource. However, that does get a little bit wary sometimes for folks who, just want to get focused on one message or one item at a time. So providing 20, 30 links is not really helpful for everyone. Maintain a minimum of 14-point font size. 14-point font size, I assume, is deemed the most legible and easy to read text size for multiple screen sizes and both for mobile and desktop. So I would just definitely, adhere to that best practice. Maintain good contrast. I haven't received any emails yet so far that have horrible contrast. Usually it's black and white or dark colors with light colored text, or vice versa. So I would follow that guideline. Avoid visual cues based on colors. Include closed captioning for all videos. So again, this is kind of a little bit redundant to what we have been saying, including closed captioning for videos as well as alt text for your images. Try not to use visual cues based on color. And then we're going to go right into physical accessibility. So here are some things based on, your physical business space. Okay, so so we were talking everything that was online. Now this is kind of going into more of the physical aspects of accessibility. And this pertains to maybe your retail shop or your location where you have visitors come and maybe, experience your product or service. So here are some best practices to follow. Remove obstacles from physical space. So you want to have enough walk around space that fits, enough for a wheelchair, because that's typically how much, personal space you would like to have when you're walking around a store. So whether you're able-bodied or you're, in a handicap situation, you definitely want to have it where traffic can flow in between, whether you have counters or you have aisles. You want to make sure people are comfortable moving in and out of your space. Confirm access, right? Elevators, wheelchair entrance, as well as parking spots. These are all things that need to be considered, especially if you have multiple seasons. You would have to consider, making sure you have a clear path from the parking lot to your storefront, to the doors, ramp for people who are in wheelchair, just easy way of accessing that front door or the space that you're, allowing people to walk to. And then making sure that, again, not all businesses follow this. However, it just makes it so much better experience for all of your potential customers or even people who are visiting you to understand the ADA regulations and to comply with those guidelines. Welcome service animals, right? And I know this in recent years has been a little bit controversial in some regard, but for legitimate service animals, you should be welcoming to them. So again, you shouldn't be petting these animals, but you should give them ample space to work with their handler. So you can read up about that on the ADA regulations, as well as other websites that cater to those folks that have service animals. And then one easy way for people to know that you are an advocate and you're a supporter of this is to publicize your support for accessibility. And you can easily do that on your website, on your social media, and then also on your storefront. You can hang out signs to let people know, hey, this location has implemented accessibility for everyone, right? And then really to have all these things that we talked about online accessibility, physical accessibility, really at the end of the day, it's being inclusive, right? It's serving to everybody because it doesn't really, it's not a disadvantage for anyone who doesn't have a disability, but it gains so much more for the folks that do have a disability, whether they're visible or invisible disability. So this is a great way for everybody to enjoy, content online. And then for small business owners, for ways of people to engage with your content in a more meaningful and better way for them. So how can we be a little bit more inclusive? These are a few points that we have. Don't make assumptions, right? It's okay to ask if they need help, but you shouldn't make assumptions that they would, want to do certain things this way, but you can always ask in a nice way. Speak normally. It is sometimes viewed as rude unless if somebody asks you to speak up in a louder tone or, in a different way. Definitely speak normally to everyone. And if you aren't sure, just ask. So I kind of preemptively put that early with the assumptions. But if you're unsure, right, and we're human, we don't know all things that in regards to people with disability or accessibility tactics. So it's always good to just ask and provide that type of service or even just the accessibility part for your audience group. And then respect individuals' requests and personal space. That's also a something that will be common sense. However, it's always good to kind of remind people that some folks do need additional support or additional items in order to better engage or view your content. So definitely make sure you cater to them. For folks that again, this is a short workshop webinar in regards to these different items about accessibility and also ADA compliance. I would strongly recommend, if you are looking to revamp your website, if it doesn't have any of the items that we talked about, these are great resources to help you to get you from where you are now to a more accessible website or content for everyone to enjoy. So you can definitely check out these resources and go from there. I appreciate everybody joining us today. If you had the moment, please either right below me or right next to me, depending on how your screen is set up, scan the QR code that you see on the frame of this live stream right now, And this way you can fill out a survey, let us know how we were doing, how you like the content, the topic that we discussed today. And this goes back to Google as well as USPAC. And hopefully you learned something today, and that you can improve your website and also help out your audience groups. Again, my name is Dave Lee, the presenter for today. If anyone has questions, feel free to send it my way. You can also send them to info@uspac.com.